everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And again, apologies for this being a day late. We both had obligations yesterday. Also, we weren't willing to move those obligations because this game made us very angry. But yeah, K-State lost to Utah, and it would have been one thing if what we projected to happen happened, where K-State just got absolutely throttled by Utah, which, you and I projected that to happen. No, instead, we lose in perhaps the most heartbreaking way possible, and losing 51-47, your best offensive performance on the year. There's no way to swallow that to make that feel good. And of course, we are going to address the controversy, but let's talk about the good first. And I think the first and foremost good is Joe Jackson.
Yeah, he had the absolute game of his life. He deserves a major shout out because it has been a slow year for him, a year that was projected to be a breakout season for him. And he just hasn't lived up to that yet. Not all of it within his control. I think he's had some really poor run blocking this year. But he still made his fair share of mistakes as well. So he's not entirely blameless. But nevertheless, this was the best rushing performance in the history of K-State football. Is exactly what it was. And I'm very, very happy for him. I think he deserves it. And he doesn't get rewarded with a win for his efforts, which is just crazy to say. But he had a better game than Abu Sama did against us in the snow game. And Sama is still running. But Joe was just absolutely fantastic. The first couple big runs, I thought, okay, let's see when they adjust, but they just
didn't.
They just didn't. And it was incredible to see him in space. The first few times he was in space, he honestly ran kind of weird to me. It looked like he was running like he was bracing. And I think that's because he wasn't used to having room to run this year, which is correct. He has not really had room to run this year. But in this game, he got more comfortable running in space by the second touchdown, I think. And I don't know, man. Just he showed some great moves in space as well. Teo Johnson, he kind of really made him look silly in space, and Teo Johnson is going to be a all Big 12 safety. So it's and then Jackson also, he showed some power at times. He even got a pass too. I was hoping we would maybe use him in the passing game a little bit more in the second half. I thought that was a point that we could exploit a bit. Fixate on him so much in the run. Let's see how he can affect as a pass catcher as well, because we have been pretty good at using running backs as pass catchers. But I digress on that at least. But shout out to Joe Jackson, now the Rice-Eccles Stadium record holder for rushing yards in a game, and the K-State single game record holder as well.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that it was Joe Jackson, because Joe Jackson has long been one of our favorite players. And, he just seems like a genuinely good dude. And he really took every opportunity and took advantage of just about every opportunity. And I 100% agree with you. He looked confused when he was actually given open space to run. But once he sort of adjusted to the fact that, wait a minute, yeah, I'm going to get that, he flashed the speed that we saw in high school that made him such a dangerous player then. And Yeah, I was really, really happy with Joe Jackson in this game. And Antonio Martin also did well, 5 for 89 in a touchdown. And the weirdest thing is that the main adjustment that K-State made, if you're looking for like a schematic analysis, was just going back to gap running, which you think would be an obvious solution given that this offensive line was seemingly built from the very beginning to be a gap running scheme. Sorry, I also have Monday Night Football pulled up on my other monitor, and Brock Purdy just threw a second horrible interception. So nothing really new going on there, but I just had to make note of it. But the gap scheme is what this offensive line was more or less built for. The new offensive linemen that K-State are bringing in, I think, are more fit for the zone scheme. People like Gus Hawkins, Caden Massey especially. I think you put Caden Massey in like a wide zone offense, that man is going to eat. But this offensive line, especially Devin Voss, I think Devin Voss had an amazing game. But just switching to that gap scheme against a really stout defensive line in Utah, I think it really made all the difference in the world. Which we'll talk about this before we get to the controversy, but after we talk about the positives, there is, I think, a legitimate critique of like, why didn't we do that earlier? But neither here nor there. I think the other big positive in this game is I think Matt Wells' play calling was significantly better, and that just happens to coincide with him going into the box. It also happens to coincide with 1 week after you saying you're getting off the Matt Wells train and me saying that I wouldn't care either way if he's back or not. So once again, the Alleycat jinx strikes.
Yeah. Better late than never, I guess, for that. But I don't know, man. I still don't know if I'm sold on Matt Wells long term, just because of how bad the whole rest of the year has been. Despite this, excellent game, I still don't know, man. For as great as an offensive performance as this was from Joe Jackson and the run game as a whole, I need to see more consistency from Matt Wells at this point. I mean, he's lost me. Even with a record-setting week, I don't know if I can be won back with 1 week. Especially, I mean, you mentioned earlier, this is an offensive line kind of built for gap. And if that's the case, like, I know that you're a good football mind, but Matt Wells is paid, like 7 figures to be a better football mind than you. No offense.
None taken. It's not my job.
I'd like to think that we could get that figured out, that we need to switch up our run schemes a little bit earlier than the second last week of the season and what is considered to be a lost season.
And I will also, not to interrupt you, but I will also say that weirdly enough, that's something that carried over from the previous season. Connor Riley was at his best when he was calling gap runs and then just suddenly switched up to heavy zone with no explanation. And that's when the running game got bad and stagnant. This isn't me like washing Matt Wells' hands of it, because no, absolutely not. He's a different human being. He should not be making the same mistakes as someone before him. I'm just saying it's a weird theme.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of like new things to say about Matt Wells, like haven't been said already. I guess I am curious about, is this going to a press box thing? Is that a causation or correlation thing with play calling. I'm curious. I think he's going to be in the box again for the Colorado game. I think primarily just to stay out of the elements, which it worked last week. Like that was excuse enough for me, especially because Colorado was like 3-7 or 3-8 or whatever. I don't think Manuel's being on the field will make any difference in this game, if there is any positive difference to be had. But yeah, I like obviously, shout out to Joe, shout out to the offensive line, shout out to Antonio Martin as well. Avery had a couple of nice runs as well. I don't know. I guess one of the biggest critiques I think you could have for the offense is it felt like we kind of a little late, maybe got just a little too far away from what was working early. I think to the 3 and out we had with a little under 3 minutes left, where we got the ball with 2:47 and we punted with 2:37. Joe Jackson only ran the ball one time on that drive, and we knew, Utah had the timeouts. So I think the first play was a lost one because it was that broken screen pass. It just didn't work. Then we ran Joe, and then we were in 3rd and long and just had to throw the ball. And I get that you're not going to run the ball or not going to run the ball on that, like what we would have needed to be a game-winning drive. But most of Joe's yards were in the first half, which some of that's going to be, defensive adjustments from Utah. But Joe still had a nice touchdown around the second half. Antonio Martin had his long touchdown that wasn't in the second half as well.
Oh my God. We'll save it for later, but good Lord, that is one of the many calls that, okay. The other one is there are far too many drops. We know that. That's not new. I don't think there's anything to be said about the defense. They played fine, and then they didn't. I think that was more of just a whole team collapse and a swift kick that knocked the wind out of just about everyone. So we can talk with the controversy that happened in the game and then the controversy after the game. Now listen, I've gone on record multiple times. I think blaming the referees 9 times out of 10 is loser behavior that should not be encouraged. I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, but you can say this is loser behavior if you want, but this is the only time in my life that I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that the finger was on the scale against a team. Not just a team, like not just, K-State, but I'm including just about every game that I have watched this year. I have never felt like the officiating was such a thumb on the scale in favor of one team, and it was in favor of Utah. There are so many bad calls. There are so many no calls. Like the Lincoln Cure quote-unquote hold is a hold technically, but is also just a block 9 times out of 10. Like that frustrated me. The not letting the team get the sub off, even when the defensive linemen were sprinting to the sideline, when they have to be given that reasonable expectation and that reasonable time to sub out. The no call on the DPI that would have been a touchdown for K-State against Jerron Tibbs. There were so many things that happened in this game that just abjectly should have been called or should not have been called, and the majority of them were in favor of Utah, including an ineligible man downfield penalty, which if they didn't call against K-State earlier in the game, I would chalk up to saying, that happens. Sometimes you're going to end up with those calls that just end up missed. No, this refereeing crew was on top of those calls and just refused to call it up against Utah. And it is that. If officiating is bad all the way around, and I'm sorry for taking up so much airtime, if officiating is bad all around, I can tolerate it. Yeah, it sucks. It's stupid. But if it's like intentionally, I can't say intentionally. I don't know if referees are public figures or not, and I don't want to get hit with a defamation lawsuit, but I think they've made themselves a matter of public concern here. But good God, this is the least partial refereeing crew that I think I've had, that I have seen in a Big 12 football game.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, like, I'm pretty calm at this point because it's been a couple days. But I was like just completely inconsolable after this game. Like, I mean, we went in 5-5, and I predicted us to lose by 4 scores in the preview. And I, before the game, was talking about how I really had no expectations and no emotional investment in the game. And by the end, I was like the most upset that I've ever been after a K-State game in terms of anger and feeling like it was like taken from us. I was madder after this game than I was Baylor in 2012. Like, because Baylor, we weren't in it. This game, I genuinely felt like was ripped from us. And it wouldn't have saved the season. Like, that's not the point. The point, I think, is it really felt like I think you put it well. It felt like the scales were weighted against us in this game. And there were, I think another thing you put well is there were a lot of calls that either bothered me because they weren't called the other way, or they wouldn't have bothered me on a no call if they hadn't been called on us. And then there were a few, I'm thinking in particular the Dampier intentional grounding, where they almost didn't call it. And they
had to be forced.
Yeah, it was just that obvious that they couldn't reasonably like get away with it. Lincoln Cure's holding on the Antonio Martin touchdown, that was, I think, I don't think it ended up mattering. I think we got a touchdown on that possession, but it was a just objectively terrible call. I thought I couldn't believe it. Which, yeah, that did end up being a touchdown on that possession. And you could argue it actually ended up working in our favor because we burned 8 minutes 15 seconds of clock on that possession. That was maybe the best offensive possession of the entire season. Other than the 3 plays where we overthought it in 1st and goal from the 1. And then on the last play, we remembered that we could just run a touchdown play, and then it worked. But yeah, I know that I've seen a counterpoint made, or maybe just an attempt at appearing unbiased from some in kind of the K-State journosphere about Malcolm Crowder maybe jumping off sides, and the refs not calling that. But I don't really think that we ever get a conclusive angle on that. And offsides is really tough to tell unless you have a straight down the line angle, or he's just all the way into the other offensive line. And if he had been offsides, it would have been a sliver. And I've also seen some people say, well, we don't know if Utah subbed. That's not how the rule works. The rule works in the way where if the play ends on the sideline of the team with the ball, it's assumed that they substitute, because teams could substitute theoretically without the defense noticing immediately. Because if it's on their sideline and players are all mixed up in the sideline on the field, they're giving the benefit of the doubt to the defense. And even in the case where they didn't do that, and the ref just mistakenly held up the snap, there would have been no reason for them to just decide against that and change their mind there at the very end. I didn't get that either. And it was just an objectively bad call. There were There was like one genuinely good call in this game, and it was the Ryan Davis targeting, which that was like the stupidest play I've ever seen.
Oh my God, I forgot that happened. With everything else that happened this game, I forgot that happened.
Yeah, it was rough. I could not believe it. Like I just audibly was like, "You idiot!" I don't know what he was thinking in that moment. Learning experience, I guess, but why? Why would you?
You shouldn't need to learn that lesson.
No, you shouldn't.
That's like don't shoot someone. Like
Yeah.
that's not a lesson you should have to learn.
Don't break the law, Ryan. But what if I did once just to see?
Then you get kicked out of the game.
And that's what happened. But then, of course, another one that's been mentioned has been the 2-point conversion that was brought back for 2, and he picked up pass interference on that. I wouldn't have been as upset if they just hadn't thrown the flag in the first place, then picked it up. And I also wouldn't have been as upset if they hadn't called pass interference on us, or no called it, I should say, earlier on Utah for another offense in the end zone. It was a pass to Tibbs where the Utah defender got there early, and I was kind of reaching behind him, but they no called that. And then this Lincoln Cure one, for me, it was the restriction of the left arm. Like, to me, that should make it pass interference. But gosh, I don't get it, man. And then earlier in the game as well, there was, I think it was, no, it wasn't Gunner. It was Fortenberry, I think. Where he like kind of
illegal contact that isn't.
Yeah, like Fortenberry, they got him for the Utah receiver kind of runs into him, and Fortenberry like kind of puts his arms around him, and they call him for that. And in my mind, that's fine, but you also have to call the other restrictions in in the movement of a receiver, like with Lincoln Cure's arm, like with wrapping around Jerron Tibbs. Like that's fine. You call it on us, but it has to go both ways. And there was no consistency in that regard in this game. And one thing I didn't know until this game, K-State least penalized team in the Big 12 this season. They had 35 penalties going into this game against Utah. They got 10 in this game for 75 yards, which was just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and granted, like 6 of those were on one drive, which perhaps might be the dumbest drive in K-State history. Which we can laugh about it now because, like, well, maybe it is worse. But, I mean, at least none of those calls, well, at least we didn't know what the rest of the game was about to become because that was, I think, also the Fortenberry drive. But everything else that was there, I'm like, yeah, that probably should have been called. But the rest of the game was just high-tier shaboinery that should have never occurred. And I think the absolute worst part about it is that there are Utah fans that are legitimately gloating about that fact. Which, first off, if there is one team that, like, if we could vote to kick one team out of the Big 12 and just leave them in, send them to the 3-team Pac-12, I would 100% vote for Utah. I don't care that they're a brand. I hate their fan base. They are perhaps my least favorite no, they are not perhaps. They are my least favorite non-rival fan base. And if we're including rivals, they are still just my second least favorite fan base because of the strange sense of entitlement that the people in a place called Salt Lake decided to have one day. You live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I know I'm not one to talk. I live in Topeka, Kansas. But you have no right to be high and mighty when you live in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I really don't get it. And there has been a mix from Utah fans as well that I've seen, all negative, but it's been a mix either of gloating about the win, knowing that the calls went their way, or pointing at K-State fans for citing the officiating as a reason for the loss, or really the reason for the loss. And Utah fans I don't think they need to be reminded that they've really spent the better part of a year complaining about officiating from their game against BYU last season, and they went 5-7 last year. And so I don't think they have a nanometer to talk on complaining about officiating in this game. But no, I totally agree with you. I would kick them out of the Big 12 in a heartbeat. I know that, like, technically it'd probably be a better idea to kick out UCF. Like, I understand logically that's probably the better move, but I would absolutely kick out Utah faster if I could.
I don't hate UCF. UCF does nothing to offend me.
Yeah, UCF, like, they're not really good at anything, and they're not a value add, and they don't bring a lot of revenue to the conference, at least not right now. But at least they're, like, happy to be here. Like, they don't cause trouble. Like, Utah, like, has been a bad neighbor since they've shown up in this conference. In last year, did nothing but complain about how bad the conference is when they were kind of bringing up the rear. And now they're talking about how they're kings of the castle when
they're not even going to make the championship game.
Yeah, and they probably won't even make the championship game. They're not even the best team in their state, and the state is Utah. And yeah, I thoroughly don't enjoy their fan base. I kind of wish we hadn't thrown them a life raft. I do understand financially that it was a good decision. I really wouldn't be upset if they were asked to leave, though.
No, not at all. And speaking about being upset with a fan base, now we get to talk about the Chris Kleiman presser after the game. And I want to make my position known very, very clearly, not because I, fear retribution from anyone in the K-State fan base, but because it is my inherent desire to be understood in all that I say, as I think most people's desire should be. I think that you can take whatever you want from the Chris Kleiman press conference. You can say that it was wrong for him to blame the fan base. You can say that it was a little too self-aggrandizing, saying, how much he has sacrificed for this program. You can have a problem with that. I think that you are wrong and you are making a very strange value decision if you do both of those things. But that's within your right, and I will just let you carry on. But getting after him in a season where one of the biggest criticisms of him has been a perceived lack of passion, and then getting after him for showing emotion and tearing up in a post-game press conference, to me, those two ideas simply are not compatible. And this is coming from someone who, on occasion, has said, yeah, Kleiman probably needs to hang it up because, it doesn't seem like his heart is in it anymore. I am saying that as someone who has held that position and was proven wrong by that presser. Now, again, if I was in Chris Kleiman's situation, would I have taken that approach in a press conference? Probably not. I mean, I feel like at some point every man just has a break. I mean, every person has a breaking point where, they just have to, you're going to end up wearing your emotions on your sleeve a little bit more. And I'm not going to blame someone for doing that in the middle of everyone telling him, oh, this season has been a failure. I'd get emotional too. I'd be pissed. I'd be sad. So my position is, I take issue with what he said as I deserve more respect. I don't take issue with it. I disagree with it. because, I deserve more respect. I feel like he gets a pretty decent amount of respect from the majority of the fan base, and people are voicing frustrations. And, I get being upset by that. I don't blame him for doing that. But what bothers me is the people saying, "Oh, the term," and if the person listening to this episode, if they're listening to this episode, they know that they tweeted this. It's crocodile tears. It's fake tears. No, Chris Kleiman is many things. He is not a method actor. He's not a good liar. He's never been. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I'm curious if you have like different thoughts and opinions on it, because for some reason it's like me and K-State man, and I guess Drew Galloway, are kind of on this Cole Carmody. So like a few more optimistic voices in K-State media, me, and then K-State man 14 are like on this island.
Yeah. I think people are just really upset right now, and Kleiman's the obvious direction for ire. And I think some of it's deserved, but I do think the whole press conference thing's being blown way out of proportion, especially by people that want him gone. I think that there's a whole psychological study to do on this, and I'm not being ironic, about the intersection of social media, the rise of financial influence in sports, and how we view athletes and coaches as not being people, but as instruments for entertainment. I'm not smart enough to do that study, but I'm not stupid enough to not see the connection. And that's not going to be the topic of this show. And that's probably not something I'll tackle, but I do think a lot of the terminally online fan base, of which I am a part, frankly, we have a podcast. We're ringleaders in the terminally online fan base. It just happens that our circus is a little low in attendance right now. I do think it's really easy to forget that he's a human being. And I'm not saying that to say, well, we should just like let him lose in perpetuity. That's not what I'm saying. I understand that there's expectations with the job, and I'm with you. I've been on record this year as saying that I think it might be best for K-State going forward to move on with a new head coach. That my view on that hasn't really changed. What my view has changed on, and you knocked on you, and you pretty much said it the exact same way I was going to, was that I've also thought that Chris Kleiman was out of gas and didn't have passion, and that's just patently false. I think like that's not true. It's possible still the game has passed him by, or that his propensity for making internal hires and kind of being hands off with the locker room, which is inherently a bad thing, but can be bad if you don't bring the right guys in. It's possible that may still make it to where he's not the best leader for the program now, but it's not going to be because he doesn't care. And that's a different thing. So like hand up, I'm totally wrong on that. The man for sure cares. That doesn't mean that he's entitled to the job. Sure. Again, like I said, my position on that hasn't changed. Like I do think we should move on. I don't think we're going to, but I do think we should. I have been a lot more sympathetic, though, I think the most, to Kleiman's reaction in the press conference. Some of it, I guess, is maybe tied into my personal reaction to the game and how I felt and how upset I was. And I think seeing Kleiman react the way he did, while I was admittedly annoyed and a bit upset that he didn't take a big fine for yelling about the refs. I wish he would have done that. I understand, though, that's just not who he is. It'd be like asking Jerome Tang to like be stoic after a top 10 win.
Or just be stoic in general, honestly.
Yeah, like you're asking him to be someone that he isn't. And that's no matter what you think of him, that's just not a fair thing to do. People are who they are. We know who Kleiman is. He's been here for 7 years. But I felt more sympathetic than I expected to, I think, for the emotion that he showed. How do I want to put this? I've definitely in the past been part of the camp, and I don't think this is a wholly invalid thought, that that's why they're paid as much as they are. And I do think to a certain extent it's true. They make generational wealth to coach football. But it's put that simply, like, yeah, that sounds like easy street. I mean, it's high stress for sure, but it's not hard in the sense that manual labor is hard, or that being a doctor's hard, or like a PA or a nurse. Like those are like manually difficult jobs, or like super mentally taxing jobs. It's like being a coach is very stressful and it can be mentally taxing, but it's not quite the same. The expectations and margin of error are way different. But again, that's maybe where the money comes in. But I do think that ultimately, I think Chris Kleiman's a good person. So maybe that's where I guess I'm coming from. I feel for the guy. I am a big old softy myself, but I do feel for him because I know that the season isn't going the way that he was intending. And I do think if we had any other AD, he'd probably be on his way out right now. And to be fair, that's a whole other conversation that maybe deserves some chatter of its own.
Yeah, I don't want to have that conversation tonight.
Yeah, I'm not getting into all that tonight for sure, but that's all. It's a problem. We're aware of it. Not going to talk about it right now, though. But I've seen some chatter, though, about, like professionals or people in other work environments. Like if I showed emotion, like at my job, like this when I wasn't doing well, like nobody would care. Like, and I do kind of want to draw like a hard line between a normal office job or even like a blue collar job and being a Division I football coach. Like, those are just vastly different things. Like, I go to work, I come home. Sometimes I have good days, sometimes I have bad days. Like, that's how it goes. And I have emotional responses, either positive or negative, based on how my day goes. And my job is like 1% as intense as being a head football coach, having to manage tons and tons and tons of money, fan expectations, warranted or not, but the pressure is there. Coaches as well. And then just the constant games, the constant grind. It's, again, like, feel bad for him or don't, but it's your life. It really is. And also, I think another important dividing line is it's at its core, it's at its core emotional. Sports are wildly emotional. We have emotional responses to sports. I don't think it's fair for fans, short for fanatics, to tell a coach to not have an emotional response to the game that they are coaching. We as fans have emotional reactions to what we see on the field, good and bad, just like we do at our work. And just like our work, our status as fans is so far separated from the amount of work that goes in the locker room. And I'm not telling fans to not be upset. I've said this a few times. I want to be absolutely clear. If you're a fan, you're upset with how the season's going, that's fine. I'm not happy with how the season's going either. This is not a discussion about, like, we should, like, not care about wins and losses. Like, doesn't matter. No, we should care about wins and losses. This is more personal. Like, well, shoot, I lost my train of thought because of that.
I'll sort of, maybe you'll recover it, because I think you touched on something that I think is vastly important. There's a very strong difference between personal and professional. There's a right way to criticize someone in how they are doing their job. And, I say this, oh, there's no objective right or wrong way to do. Shut the up. Stop talking. Like, I'm writing it down. Yeah, I have to get the post-it note out.
That's a bad word, man.
That's a no word. But I guess now I have it written down. I can just kind of say whatever I want now. But I like that. That's a really, really stupid argument. There's a very big difference between saying Chris Kleiman hasn't coached very well this year, and that is why I think that his response rings hollow. That's fine. That is a professional critique that someone can actually grow from. Saying that, Chris Kleiman doesn't care, or there's a fine line between saying he doesn't care and that is affecting his professional duties, and then saying when you go to the personal level, it's like, oh, he's being a baby, he's being too emotional, things like that. I'm just speaking. I have a very similar experience to you. We both work in very different types of law. Neither of us are attorneys yet, but we both work in very different types of law. And there are types of law that can be very emotionally taxing. I work as a disability rights intern. Connor works at, I believe is it just an estates firm, or is it estates, trusts, all that?
Estate planning, trust planning, business planning, guardianship, conservatorship.
Okay.
That's basically everything right there.
Okay. So we both have had emotional responses to things that we have seen at work. I mean, we obviously can't say a lot of it because confidentiality rules exist, and I would like to become a lawyer before I get told I cannot be one.
The penalty is just not worth it for revealing information.
But I've had emotional responses to some of the cases that I have worked on. And I don't think that is a character flaw. I don't think, showing emotion, I've come very close to shedding a few tears about some of the cases that I have worked on. I don't view that as a character flaw. And, the point being is, I think, and this is everyone, this isn't just K-State fans, and even I'm bad at it, I think people have a very, very tough time distinguishing the personal critique as opposed to the professional critique. And to me, the line gets drawn whenever you are talking about someone doing their job versus who someone is as a person. And, when I frame it like that, it sounds like it's a wholly uncontroversial statement. Everyone will probably, 95% of people will probably agree that personal and professional should be two separate lines of criticism, outside of very rare exceptions. It gets more difficult whenever you start trying to put that rule into application, especially in something so emotionally charged and that fosters such an emotional connection as sports. And I guess the best example that I can come up with, I don't know why I'm still holding the pen. Connor, you've seen me wave this pen like a magic wand for the past 2.5 minutes.
I'm holding a broken bit of the top of a clothes hanger. So you can hold a pen. That makes way more sense than what I'm doing.
To me, the distinction rises in Kleiman isn't doing a good job coaching the team right now, or he should have done better with an NIL push. Professional. Kleiman is emotionally weak and completely unfit to lead a program as it is. You can think that statement is true all you want. I still think it crosses the line. And for the record, I don't think it's true. That's where I draw the distinction.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair distinction to draw. And there's even the possibility that it is true, but ultimately we don't know. I think we'd be doing a lot worse right now if that was completely true. Like I do think he's someone that's been through a lot that we probably don't know about. Which I mean, who among us, I guess, but still at the same time, like I've been trying to find in myself to kind of give him more grace um, on this, especially because I have been part of the crowd that has said, you know, like maybe his heart isn't in it anymore. Like I just feel that's not true. But yeah, thank you for kind of cleaning up the train of thought there on the just the emotionally charged nature of sports. And like I mean, like that's part of why we love it. Like that's why we built a $500 million stadium that we use 6 to 7 times a year. Like that was not intentional. But
yeah, it's not so funny when it happens to you, is it?
no, it is funny. I mean, like we build that because people have an emotional connection to it and they want to see success. I mean, I do too. That's not only why those tickets sell, but it's why, like simulators like college football games like sell because people want to fantasize their team reaching the top. Like they like have an emotional connection to that. Like it makes our neurons like bounce off each other. Like, and it makes us happy to think about. And so it upsets us when things aren't going well. But I also think that's what separates the critique of showing emotion in sports versus in any other professional environment, which first of all, I don't think crying in a professional environment, dependent on context, is like just objectively bad. Like it could be, it very well could be. It may be manipulative. It could be any sort of things, but you can't just flatly say crying is bad. Like it's a human emotion. We're born with them. Like it came free with your instincts and your existence. Like use it. Like there's a reason that we do it. It's ultimately to make us like feel better, to emotionally regulate ourselves. Like if you want to get into the nitty gritty on it, but I guess I've been rambling a lot on this, but basically what I'm saying is I don't think it makes Chris Kleiman a worse leader of young men to wear his heart on his sleeve and show frustration and cry a little bit. I think maybe today more than ever, young people could really benefit from having a leader that is willing to show emotion and is willing to say like it is okay to like cry. It's okay to be happy, to like, or to be anywhere in between. Like there's a whole other discussion that I'm trying to avoid getting too deep into. But basically what I'm getting at is, especially for such an emotional industry, for like a product that is built like solely on the emotions of fans and the connections of fans, like I don't think we can tell our leaders to not share those emotions, especially in what I think most KSA fans would agree is one of the most crushing losses that we have ever had. And I don't care about comparisons to other coaches on this, honestly, because we've seen plenty of coaches that wear their hearts on their sleeves and it works great for them. And we've seen plenty that are the total opposite, businesslike, never show their cards at all. And it works really well for them too, because different people respond to different types of leadership. Like, and that's that. So I don't know. And I guess I'll end on this for my rant. If you still don't agree, like that's fine. That really is. Like I truly don't want to tell people how to fan on this. I just really want to hammer home, like at least be willing to consider another perspective on this, because I do think some of the criticism Coach Kleiman. I do think it's on the field stuff. I think it's warranted. I really do. But I think things gotten a little out of hand on him showing emotion. And I just, I guess I took a little issue with it, but
yeah, to me, it just feels gross. Anyway, I think we spent maybe 35 minutes on the game, and then the rest has been the post-game press conference. So here's what I'll do. Do you have any final thoughts? Because I'm going to toss a frag grenade into this proverbial discussion room and then end the episode.
I think I'm just going to take cover, actually, is what I'm going to do.
Chris Kleiman is just Bruce Weber again. Anyway, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, please do not send me anything about the take I just had. Actually, go ahead. Fine, whatever. I am at AC Edward00.
I'm at Connor Baumstor, capital C, capital B, a distinctly different person than Ace, who did not say the words that he just said.
If you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store. Link found in our podcast on Twitter bio. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.